Hello, everyone. Welcome to my show. Well, some people say it's a podcast, but I don't think this is a podcast. To me, a podcast is when you see somebody, they got the nice big headphones on and they got a beautiful mic here or one of those coming down, whatever. Maybe my guest knows because not only is he a stand-up comedian, he is also a podcaster. Time to meet Casey Corbin. Welcome to the show, Casey.
Thank you for having me, Nancy. It's great to be here.
My pleasure, for sure. So this is not a podcast, right?
No, well, maybe by definition it might be, but it's your podcast, so it can be whatever you want it to be. That's the great thing about having a podcast. It's what you want.
I used to argue with people, not argue, I would say, no, it's not a podcast, just an interview show, but I stopped doing that. So now, anyway, so tell me about being a podcaster for you. When did it begin?
Well, I about 2014, I went down to Los Angeles and I went on my friend's podcast, and they have a successful wrestling podcast for professional wrestling fans.
Okay.
And I had so much fun on doing the podcast, and it was overwhelming the response that it got me of me being on there. I thought, I think I want to do a podcast. And then about a year later, I started my own wrestling podcast, and I've been doing it for, oh jeepers, it's been a while. I would say 5 years. We just had our 5th year anniversary this year.
Oh,
So
congratulations. That's awesome.
thank you. Yeah.
So you focus just on wrestling?
Yeah, pretty much on wrestling, and it's the first 3 years were basically I was doing interviews almost every show,
Mm-hmm.
and then I was the only one doing the show. Like I was doing all the work myself. Well, not myself. I had a producer, but as far as booking and then the interviews and all that, it's a lot of work on just besides doing the interviews. And I got tired. That's why I got into stand up, so I don't have to work. You just tell some jokes, you go do a show, you work a half an hour, and then that's it. You know, so this became pretty, I don't know, a lot of work. So I changed the format of the show to just like like me and a co-host, or co-host and myself, where we would just talk about wrestling, because the show is talking wrestling,
Okay.
and I'll occasionally have a guest on as well. So yeah, and I kind of like it like that, but I kind of like the old way, but the same way. I believe a show has to grow, and I don't know what the new way will be. Well, we'll see someday. So whenever we get to that level, so
Yeah, I know about
yeah,
it being I know about it being a lot of work. Right now, I totally do everything myself. I don't edit very well, so I don't.
yeah,
It just goes out, other than the guest's name and what they do. That's basically the editing. But before COVID, I had a team, camera people and a producer and a director, and it was all so cool. But it is what it is. You just
yeah,
move on and adjust, right?
exactly, totally.
So now let's talk about your comedy career. So what type of comedy do you have a type? I don't know if that's the right word. Um,
Well, I would say my type of comedy is um I don't know. I would describe it as funny, silly, clever, uh, every now and again a little bit of dirty, but clever dirty, not
yeah, not
not
just
vulgar.
yeah.
Sometimes can be edgy. It all depends, because the comedy is like a journey, and the more you do it, the more you grow. And the comedian I am today is not the comedian I was 10 years ago. Well, 10 years ago. I
Right.
would say the comedian I was 10 years ago was way more edgier, but the comedian I am now is way more, I guess, TV friendly.
Mhm.
Where I don't. I'd rather write like dirty. You can write dirty jokes and edgy jokes, but in the end, I want to write funny jokes,
Yeah.
and I do think I do that by being silly and having clever writing and a good on-stage persona. So
Sounds good. 'Cause I've been very disappointed when I've gone down to see comedians, and it's usually the younger people that are crude. And
yes, and that's the thing, is like when you're young, you want to be, it's like nobody got into rock and roll when they're young. Like they all get into it when they're kids, and it's all about rebelling and being edgy. And that's the same as when you get into comedy. You want to be the edgier comics really attract to you. You attract to that because it's like, oh my God, you can say that. So you want to be that. But eventually, now I'm at the point of my journey where it's like I'd rather to appeal to masses than groups.
Good, good. That's a good point because I used to do stand up, and I think you have to know your audience, right?
Yeah, sorry. I got a little bit of the sniffles from my air conditioner.
Oh,
So
sorry.
yeah, so sorry about that. Okay, hold on, Gloria. Yes, 100%.
Well, I went to some classes, and one of the things the teacher said is, let's just say you're with your girlfriend or whatever it is, or in my case, my husband, whatever. If that person's not laughing, maybe you're not funny, you know?
Well, that's not necessarily true. Because the thing is about comedy is it's oh jeepers, it's sorry, 1 second. That blows my nose. So what's on? No, this is when you need edits. It's like
Sorry, it is what it is.
excuse me, sorry.
Yeah, comedy hits different people different ways. Jokes hit different people different ways, right?
It's subjective.
Yeah.
It's what like because everybody has their own sense of humor, so
Yes.
it's what they perceive as funny, and so anybody can think you're not. It's very hard to please
Yeah,
300 people at once,
that's true.
and that's it. And I do comedy in Toronto, and Toronto are the most diverse cities. Is the most diverse city in Canada. Vancouver is also very similar, but like so I love the fact that my jokes can make all sorts of different cultures laugh. And because like only in Vancouver, Montreal, not so much, but Vancouver and Toronto
Right.
are the most diverse in Canada.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'm mostly playing for mainly white audiences in small towns all over Canada. But that's easy for me to make them laugh. But I want to make other people from other cultures laugh at my viewing of the world. And I really like that in Toronto. That's possible. But because then when I go to travel the world, I know, I'm not intimidated by who I'm performing in front of. So I
Right.
just like to appeal to everyone, like I said, masses instead of groups. So yeah.
So growing up, were there comedians that you enjoyed more than others?
Yes. Yeah, like Eddie Murphy. Well, first, like now a lot of his stuff wouldn't stand up today, but then a lot of his stuff does.
Yeah.
And he quit doing stand up in 1988, which was far too soon, but then he put all that effort into movies. So, and he's the number one highest grossing black actor of all time. So that's great for him. So he's always been a hero.
Yeah.
But then Norm Macdonald has been a hero of mine from before I started comedy. I watched him on SNL,
Hmm.
and then he was from Ottawa. I was from Ottawa. Yeah, he's a hero of mine, and I got to work with him in 2017 and 18, or 18 and 19, pre-COVID, and a guy named Mitch Hedberg, who is just one of the coolest comedians ever. I just think his writing, like his joke writing, is my favorite because I like writing stories and like the stories and long pieces are fun, but I love when you can write a short joke, just one liners, short 1-2 liner jokes.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite. Those are I think the most difficult to write too. And Miss Hedberg, very much like Stephen Wright, but a little more different.
Hmm.
I just think he was so cool. There was one album he did called Strategic Grill Locations, which I love the name of the album because I have an old barbecue, and every time I have to barbecue, I have to pick, oh, this is the hot spot on the barbecue because this one doesn't work. And that's what it's strategic grill location. So I just think it makes me laugh because the naming an album that clearly the guy has done kitchen work in a restaurant,
Yeah.
And then number two, he has a bass player play behind him on a
Mm,
stand-up bass on stage,
right.
and it's just telling his jokes to just a jazzy bass riff. It's really creative and it's really funny and it really adds to it. So that's my favorite comedy album. And then Delirious is my favorite comedy special. Although again, I like the jokes about his family
Yeah.
when he starts telling, like, when he really gets into storytelling about his dad and his uncles and his mom and like that big family reunion and all of that stuff is just that's some of the best stuff ever, I think.
Right.
And then there are other comedians as well. Howie Mandel. I like silly comics. Like, and nobody was more sillier than Howie Mandel. He, blowing up plastic gloves on his head, silly. Like, and then today there are guys like Jim Jeffries who were very outspoken and vocal about problems in today's society, and like tells jokes with meaning. Sarah Silverman, who I absolutely adore, is hilarious. Roseanne, back in the day, her stand-up was groundbreaking, and
Yeah.
her first Johnny Carson was amazing. So I've always consumed comedy in one way or other through film, TV.
Yes, sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. So yeah, film, TV. You take that, and I'll do this for a second. Okay. There we go.
Just turned down my phone here. I forgot.
That's all right.
All right. Yeah.
So
yeah.
yeah, so I've always consumed comedy. Like my dad, and I think it's through being brought up, like two things. Being growing up in a family that liked comedy.
Mhm.
Like my dad, I remember when my dad came home with the SCTV Bob and Doug McKenzie album, and he played it, and we got to listen to it, and it was so funny. So then I started watching SCTV shortly after that, and then I think also being a middle child, I've always wanted attention, and well, now I have to stand. Now I get to stand under a light and tell jokes and have everybody watch me, and
Yeah.
nobody, and you get in trouble if they talk. So I don't think you can be any more look at me than that. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
That's another thing when you mentioned, I don't understand when people go to a comedy show and they start talking. Right?
Yeah, well,
Performers up there, like,
it's like when I'm sitting at a movie and then somebody puts their phone on and starts texting,
yeah,
that takes me out of the movie because the I can see the light
yeah,
and I look over, and that's why I bring Skittles, because they're really good to throw and they're harder than popcorn. So I'll throw a couple Skittles at them, and they don't know where it's coming from, but that phone goes off like that. So it's just
good.
there's nothing more annoying. It's like, look at if you're not having a good time, step out, do the phone, and get back in. Like there are other people there,
Right.
and it's like people that talk at a comedy show, and heckle's even worse.
Yeah, oh,
You know,
yeah.
yeah.
I've done performances where, like, we're at a restaurant and the waitress would be talking, but every time she got close to the stage, really loudly, and I'm thinking, wait a minute here, I'm not here trying to take your job,
Yeah.
We're not competing, It's pretty
Yeah, it's
right.
yeah, that's the good thing about a good comedy club is because amongst service and all this, they actually train their servers to bend down at the tables and just talk to people in a low voice. Like a great comedy club, you don't even notice a service.
Yeah.
That's how you know it's that good.
Right.
So and and that's yeah, but it's true. Talking in a comedy show is just, even if people sitting in the front row, have a conversation, and you can only ignore it. Usually I ignore stuff like that,
Right.
but after a while, it's like, hey, like one couple was breaking up during my show. Like, take it to another restaurant. Don't break up here. I got no time for this. So
Yeah. I once had not an argument exactly with somebody, but I forget what it was, but I made a joke about something and just sitting around. I wasn't performing. And this person said to me, well, you shouldn't be joking about things like that because it's upsetting. And I said, but comedians do that. Comedians think that everything, why do we have to take everything serious? We know the world is full of serious issues, right?
Yeah,
It doesn't mean that you can't still laugh.
exactly. Well, that's the thing about comedy is I honestly believe that, there shouldn't be any borders or any restrictions. Because number one, people love to talk about freedom of speech
Yeah.
until you say something that they don't agree with,
Yeah.
and then they get upset.
Yeah.
And that's not fair. It's either one or the other. We're very lucky to have freedom of speech.
Mhm.
And there are countries where you can't say certain things.
Yeah.
In stand-up you can. However, nowadays you have to deal with the woke society. I believe it. I don't know if that's what they're called. The woke police is more what they are. And you can get me too'd or canceled for saying the wrong thing. And then usually in those issues, what they're going after is completely taken out of text. It's like maybe a fraction of your joke where they don't show the whole thing. That's the problem with today, as they, like I'm not. Hey, I do believe everything needs to improve and everything gets better, and I do. There are types of jokes that I've stopped doing in my act
Mhm.
but it's not because of the culture of that culture. It's because I've grown up.
Yeah.
Like you said, younger comics are the ones that come out and they're doing edgy jokes and they're doing these jokes and they're doing those jokes, and it's like yeah, but that's because they're new. They haven't grown. Once you realize that you want to become a professional comedian and you're not going to get paid for doing those jokes, you have to start writing funny clean material, and then you'll start getting paid for doing stuff like, now mind you, do I think a super edge. I don't even know who a super edgy comic is. Maybe Bill Burr. He's selling out stadiums, but I don't think Bill Burr is edgy. I think but Andrew Dice Clay, somebody like that,
Right.
like back in the day, couldn't do it today, or if they did, it would be nostalgic. But back then, he always, he was so this and so that. It's like, well, when you look at the concert footage, there are just as many women there as men,
Mhm.
and they're all laughing and they're all having a great time, despite all material not being that great. Um, like I said, it's subjective, and
Yeah.
I don't like it when society dictates what we should laugh at and what we shouldn't laugh at. And then there are things like roast battles where anything goes, any joke goes. But I was recently in a roast battle and I lost, and I'm fine with losing because roast battles like wrestling. It's about the battle being entertaining. It's not about who wins or loses.
Oh, okay.
But the judge, like we're not really trying to be mean to people. Well, we are, but that's for the audience. It's not real. I don't hate anybody I roast battle. After all, like in order to roast battle, you need to work with the other comedian because they have to share themselves with you so that we can know what jokes to make about them.
Oh, okay.
So yeah. So anyways, one of the jokes I did um, triggered the judge, one of the judges. And the thing is like I lost on a 2-1 vote by the judges, but one of the judges admitted that one of my jokes triggered that judge, and I was like, well, don't come to a roast battle if you get triggered, and don't don't be a judge in a roast battle if you get triggered. Like the roast battles are the worst, most offensive comedy, and that's where I still like to write some jokes, but I don't always do them.
Yeah.
But I also love the history of roasts and roasting, and all the way back to the Friars Club and the Dean Martin roasts, up to the modern day Friars Club roasts, and then the Comedy Central roasts. I've always been a fan of roasting and roast, and to this day, it's like, but most roast jokes are offensive or have to be offensive somewhat.
Yeah.
So now, instead of doing that in my regular act, I go off to a side project and I'll do a roast battle and get it all out, which is fun. So
Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
like it would be fun for sure. And as a judge, you're supposed to try to remain objective, right?
Yes. Yes. And you're not, well, I like, look at, also the way I look at it, if I triggered a judge in a roast battle, that's a pretty good joke. So,
Good
you
point.
know, yeah.
Good
So
point.
that's the
Yeah.
way I look at that. Yeah.
I know during COVID that there was no stage work for comedians or musicians or whatever. And I've talked to a lot of musicians, and my thought was that's when we needed it more than
Yes.
ever because people are stuck at home. They now
Yeah.
they can't go to a hairdresser. They can't go to some of the well, whatever. But you need some either music to listen to or some comic relief, right?
Yeah.
It just seemed to be weird that that's what was some of the things that were shut down. What do you think?
Well, it was, yeah, it's unfortunate, but from comics figured out a way, and Zoom comedy was born. And next thing you know, comedians are doing Zoom shows, broadcast into your house, whether they be private or so. Like I did, so I got hired by to do a corporate show. A corporate show is when a corporation hires you specifically to do a private show for them. And I didn't want to just sit and do it from my living room. Like nothing wrong with this. I like this. I like being here. It's my room. So I have no problem doing podcasts from this. But if I was to do a Zoom comedy show, I don't want to do it from my room sitting down. I want to take the people to the comedy club and give them that experience through Zoom. And then so whenever I got hired for it, I all the comedy clubs are closed. So it's not a big deal to call up a comedy club owner and be like, hey, can I borrow your comedy club? He's like, well, we're not doing shows. Well, yeah, I know, but I'm going to do a show. Well, who's going to be there? No one. Me, a camera, a producer. That's it. Some comics.
Right.
And I'm like, I'm going to do it on Zoom, but I want to do it in a club. So they gave me the comedy club for free. I just had to pay the workers that work with me,
Right.
and and put out a comedy club show that was broadcast to 600 people, and then I did it again for them, but the next time was for 3,000. And these shows were like, wow, when you're not making money in COVID, these shows really helped. And then I did some smaller ones, like the lower paying ones. It's like, yeah, I'm doing that from my house, where I'll just sit down and just do it and tell jokes. But one time I was doing a university show for teachers at their Christmas party, and I didn't know how to work I only knew how to do this version of Zoom,
Right.
because I was new to the Zoom. I didn't know how to get the multi-screen where everybody's on it.
Okay.
So it was just me and a woman that did not really think I was funny for a while. And then after a while, she just got up and left. But then her cat came up, and her cat sat in front of the screen. And I think the cat liked a few of my jokes. So I was literally doing jokes for a cat because I didn't know how to press the screen to see everybody else. And then I didn't know about telling people to take themselves off of mute, because a lot of people mute themselves.
Yeah.
And just because a lot of people are used to doing these work functions like this now, so they would mute themselves if they didn't have anything to say.
Right.
But the thing is I need to hear your laughter.
Yeah.
So if everybody's muted, you're just doing jokes, and they don't, like, whenever I do TV, or whenever you do TV, my buddy gave me this advice when I first started out. He's like, whenever you do TV, he's like, even if the joke bombs, just smile and laugh like it's doing great. And he goes, because they're going to put in the laughter afterwards. They're going to spice it up.
Right.
So that's what I was doing. I was like, okay, pause for laughter. All right, next joke. But honestly, I have no idea how that joke went. That show went. It was like the worst one I did.
Yeah.
But I only did like 4 or 5 of them. But they were all good. But now there are people that are so good at them, they're still doing them.
Yeah.
Where people like tune in, they will see comics, and comics will be like, like so good at it, where they'll be like, they'll do a joke and then they'll do this, and then all of a sudden a screen will pop up and be like, or they'll have like different, or they'll walk out one way, they'll come in another way. Like they've learned all these tricks
Right.
that they can bring into the stand-up now and make it more entertaining. And I think that's something.
Yeah.
Because there is a market for it because people are watching and people do like it. So I don't think that may be one of the good things COVID has brought.
Right.
But for me, I'm not interested in Zoom shows really, unless you're paying me a lot of money, because I want to be in front of people.
Yeah.
I want to, and like when COVID, every time the lockdown would end, I was the first comic back in the comedy clubs in Canada. Absolute Comedy in Ottawa. We opened up the first week before everybody else, and and I like whenever the lockdowns end, boom, I'm back to work, and even before there were vaccinations, I was back to work. I didn't we ever be standing behind plexiglass,
Yeah.
but it's just like telling jokes at a hockey game. Hey, you just have to. We got a microphone that the players can hear us, but usually in a hockey game, I'm just yelling at the player. So it's the plexiglass. We used to joke that when COVID first started, all the comedy clubs had plexiglass, and it's like, and then you go to every store and they have plexiglass, and we're like, oh, big plexiglass is making a lot of money during COVID, So, like, who are the people that are benefiting?
Yeah.
Amazon, Netflix, streaming services, plexiglass, so.
And the food delivery companies.
Them too, exactly.
For sure.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So do you have some shows coming up?
Yes. This weekend I will be in Burlington, Ontario, and doing Friday and Saturday night at Yuck Yucks. Just let me take a look at my phone here. Not only that, we also have Niagara Falls at the end of the month. I'm down there, Yuck Yucks. Niagara on the Lake, I'll be there in the upcoming month. Then I go down to the East Coast at the end of September and early October. I'll be hitting Miramichi, PEI, Halifax,
Cool.
a few other places. So Moncton. So just my Instagram page, which is Casey Corbin Comedian, always will have all the details of where I'm playing. Yeah. So
right. Unfortunately, this won't air in time for people that get the Burlington one.
That's all right.
Okay. By the way, I used to live there, so
my first TV appearance was Comedy Club 54 on Harvester Road.
All right. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
I wasn't doing comedy when I lived there. I was one of these late bloomers. Okay, so it was your Instagram was what? Say that again, please.
It's Casey Corbin, comedian.
Okay.
All one word, I believe. And that's my Instagram. And then if you want to listen to any of my albums, they're on Spotify. So Spotify, all 4 albums are there and they're free. So
very good.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Well, we're gonna end it there. Just stay on camera while I talk
no problem
here. So everybody, you've been listening to Casey Corbin, and remember, he's a stand-up comedian as well as a podcaster. And so he's on Facebook, of course, so you can check him out there. And if I forget to include some of his information, you can always go there and get it from him. But I'll try to include whatever I can. So thank you for watching the show, everybody. Take care, be nice, and peace out, folks.
A sense of community, Chilliwack's a place to be. A sense of community where you're free. Rolling through the mountains, rolling through the valley, rolling through paradise with me. It's multicultural, you're sure to see it all. Chilliwack's the place to be, you'll see. Come party in the park, go dancing after dark. Chilliwack's a place to be, you'll see.